On today's episode of Angel's Garage, watch as I transform the old FE390 out of my 1964 Thunderbird from this bare block to the beautiful engine you see here. Let's go! This here is my 1964 Thunderbird, a project car I bought a few years ago that I'm going to begin restoring in the very near future. Now this car is going to need a few small things before it's roadworthy again, like paint, and bodywork, and a new interior, and a new brake system, and rust repairs. Sorry, did I say a few small things?
What I meant to say is that this car is a basket case and needs literally everything done to it before it'll ever see the road again. And that includes rebuilding the tired old 390 that this car originally came with. This task began with pulling the engine from the car and stripping it down. I took all these parts to a local machine shop which rebuilt the heads, resurfaced the block, bored the block 20 thousandths over, and some other work. Once the machine shop was finished with all my parts, I can now truly work on rebuilding this engine. For starters, I need to paint everything before putting things back together. This process includes taping off the freshly cleaned mating surfaces, cleaning off everything with a solvent cleaner, and finally adding some primer. For primer, I'm going with Tamco Epoxy Primer, which is one of the best epoxy primers you can buy, and not too outrageously expensive either. After spraying 2 coats of primer over all my parts, it's time to add some color to this engine. The 1964 Thunderbird's engine was painted black and gold, which is what I will be painting it back into. For black, I'm going with Bill Hirsch engine paint. The nice thing about this paint is that it is a one-part paint, so even dummies like me can use it. I just shake the can like it owes me money, pour it in the gun, and go. This paint sprays nicely, however it is thick, so I need to use a gun with a large tip to shoot it. In this case, a 1.7mm tip does the trick. For the gold, I'm going with the original color for this engine, Castilian Gold. This is a PPG single stage that I had my local paint store mix up, and I must say, this color looks amazing. I also make sure to take the time and paint all my bolts too. This is one of those small details that can easily be overlooked, but in the end, it'll make your engine rebuild just that much better. Also, here's a quick tip for engine rebuilds. Pull all your nuts and bolts and other hardware into labeled bags. Trust me, it makes things so much easier when you start putting things back together. With all that done, it's time for the main event, putting this engine back together. Following the steps outlined in my Thunderbird's shop manual, my first step is to install the new crankshaft bearings into the engine. After that, I'll go ahead and put some engine assembly lube onto the camshaft, and then slide the new camshaft into the engine. While this engine is going to stay mostly stock, this is one of the few upgrades I decided to make. This is a brand new Comp Cam roller camshaft. This camshaft will help give the 390 some more power, and will hopefully be more reliable than the original camshaft and hydraulic lifters this engine originally came with. Next up is the most important part of the engine, the crankshaft. I do my best to gently lower this bad boy into the engine, which is easier said than done considering this thing weighs like 75 pounds. Right after that, I put the new crankshaft bearings into the caps, lube them up, and place the caps over the crankshaft and tighten them down. After tightening down the caps, I realized I made my first of many mistakes on my engine rebuilding journey. I forgot to install some rubber seals on the rear main bearing, which isn't a big deal. It just means the engine would dump oil into the bell housing, which is not ideal. So I had to pry up the rear main seal, install the rubber seals, and place more sealant over the cap. The seals started to back out when installing the rear main seal. However, a few light smacks of the hammer knocked those seals right back into place. Now is the fun part, torquing down all the cap bolts. These bolts require 100 foot-pounds of torque, which for reference, that's the same amount of torque that lug nuts typically have to hold the wheels on your car. Applying this much torque to an engine mounted on an engine stand with 4 wheels was quite a task, as you can see here. But with a little persistence, I got them torqued. Moving away from the block for a bit, it's time to assemble the pistons. Assembly of these is pretty straightforward. You have to first connect the pistons to the connecting rods using a wrist pin covered generously in assembly lube. Once inserted, the pin is retained with a C-clip. After that, it's time to install the rings. These pistons have 3 rings, the bottom one being the oil ring and the top 2 being compression rings. After sliding all the rings over, we've now got one fully assembled piston. Only 7 more to go. And in the blink of an eye, they're done. Time to shove these suckers into the block. Just before putting these into the engine, I first dunk each piston into some engine oil. This pre-lubricates the rings, which will help prevent them from scratching the heck out of my freshly bored block. Following that, I compress the rings with a ring compression tool, put some covers over the connecting rod studs so I don't scratch the heck out of my crankshaft, and then ever so gently smack the top of the pistons with a mallet to drive them into the block. After each piston is shoved in, I rotate the block and attach the rod cap to each connecting rod and then torque them down. Now this thing is starting to kinda look like a working engine. I turned the engine over a few times with a wrench to make sure nothing was binding, and lucky for me, everything was good so far, so I went ahead and pressed on. Next up, head installation. This is also pretty straightforward. Just slap down some new head gaskets, drop the heads onto the engine, and then just like everything else so far, torque all the bolts down. Now torquing these bolts down took a bit longer because you have to torque these bolts in increments up to 90 foot-pounds. So for example, you'd first torque everything to 20 foot-pounds, then 40 foot-pounds, and so on. It's possible that if you just torque these bolts down to 90 foot-pounds right away, that you could crack your heads, which, from what I understand, is not good for engine performance. Time for the timing chain. Heh, get it? Time for the timing chain? Okay, I'll be quiet now. Anyways, installing the timing gears and chain might sound a little daunting. I mean, if the engine is out of time, then all it is a big oily doorstop. Well, thankfully, the engineers who designed these gears knew what kind of dummies work on these engines, so they include some dots on the gears. All you gotta do is point the dots at each other, slide the gears on, and then your engine is in time. Talk about simple. Right after sliding the gears on, I then bolt on the fuel pump eccentric. This is basically just a cam lobe that moves the plunger on the fuel pump. Now it's time to work on the oil pump. I first attach the pickup tube to the new oil pump and then torque it down. Right after that, I need to run some oil through the oil pump to prime it. Now this was taking a while for me, so instead of priming the pump by hand, I attached the oil pump drive shaft to a drill and primed it that way. Right after that, I installed the oil pump into the engine. Now if you noticed a step missing there, then you are absolutely correct. I forgot to install the oil pump drive shaft first. You know, the part that was just attached to the drill. So to fix this, I had to remove the oil pump, install the drive shaft, and then reinstall the oil pump. Since the timing chain and gears are on, I can now work on installing the timing chain cover. The first thing to do is to install a new front oil seal on the timing chain cover to keep all the oil inside of the engine. Hopefully. Right after that, I clean the mating surface of the timing chain cover with a die grinder to get it as smooth and contaminant free as possible. Since my goal is to keep oil inside of the engine, and since I really don't plan on taking any of these parts off anytime soon, I go ahead and put down some RTV along with the gaskets to make darn sure that not a single drop of oil escapes this engine. I repeat this process on the oil pan gasket and then install the oil pan. Hopefully, I never have to remove this thing because while RTV is great for keeping things dry, it also makes your life quite miserable if you ever have to take things apart. Next up, lifters. These lifters are made specifically for a roller camshaft, and are actually where the roller camshaft gets its name from. Instead of being solid pieces of metal, these lifters have wheels on the bottom of them that rotate on the cam lobes. Not only do these wheels reduce friction and wear, but the shape of the lobes they ride on actually allow the valves to stay open longer, allowing your engine to breathe more fuel in and spit out more greenhouse gases, or exhaust. In the end, this leaves your engine with more power and more reliability from the reduced wear. Time for the harmonic balancer. After installing the timing mark pointer, I slide on a new harmonic balancer and then proceed to make my third mistake. You see, I was supposed to install a pulley first, then the bolt. But because I thoroughly enjoy performing my work twice, I go ahead and torque down the harmonic balancer, only to then realize that I goofed up. After that, I took off the bolt, installed the pulley like I should have, then reinstall the bolt again. I was now ready to install the intake. While most parts of the engine I applied the sealant to was optional, the manual actually said I needed to install sealant on the surfaces mating to the intake. Since this behemoth of an intake weighs like 80 pounds, I really don't feel like taking it off ever again, so I go ahead and cover all the surfaces liberally with sealant. All of this sealant will ensure the intake never leaks. However, it will also make it extremely challenging to remove, which should never, ever happen. This is called foreshadowing. Anyways, after sealing everything up, it's time to lower this boat anchor onto the engine. And just like everything else so far, time to torque it down. This engine is starting to look quite good now. With the majority of the internal work done now, all I have to do is install the push rods and rocker shaft, and we'll be good to go. After some quick measurements and a trip to Summit Racing Equipment, I install a set of new push rods into the engine. And right after that, I put the rocker shafts back onto the engine. This is another item you have to tighten down very slowly and in sequence, or you run the risk of bending the shafts. With the top end of the engine complete, it's now time to add those gold valve covers. Gold and black are definitely two colors that look amazing together, and after installing the valve covers on the engine, it is looking extremely sharp. Hopefully nothing happens that makes me take this engine apart ever again. Now at this point, I was feeling pretty good about the rebuild so far, but while checking through the shop manual to see if I missed anything, I noticed this picture. The baffle plate, huh? I don't recall putting this part in the engine. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where it is. Oh wait.
Uh-oh.
Mother!
That's my valley pan, aka the baffle plate. And after doing some research, I decided that it would be best to install it. But I didn't want to take this freshly sealed engine apart. Then I got to thinking, maybe there's another way to fix this. Perhaps a more American way to fix this. Unfortunately, shooting my problems did not make them go away. So, with no other options, I now had to take my engine halfway apart just to install this stupid piece of tin. So you know what that means. Valve covers, off. Rocker shafts, off. Push rods, out. Intake, off. And don't you worry, I had all the fun in the world moving this glued-on intake manifold. Taking things apart was only half the battle though. Now had the equally exciting task of scraping off all the old sealant. Using a fresh razor blade, I was able to carefully clean off the heads and block without too much difficulty. The razor did not like the intake though. So I got rid of the razor and instead used a die grinder, which got the job done in no time. With everything clean, it's now time to throw the valley pan in. I found a valley pan that did not have bullet holes in it and shoved it into the engine, just like what I should have done the first time, but we won't talk about that. Now that all the surfaces are clean, I apply a new layer of sealant, install some new gaskets, and then lower the intake onto the engine. Again. And then torque down the intake. Again. The push rods go in next, followed by the rocker shaft. This leaves only one thing left on this rework adventure. The valve covers. And oh boy were they a treat. I put sealant on these guys too. So you know the drill. Die grinder, new sealant, new gasket, reinstall, and re-torque. And finally, it was just like nothing ever happened. Well, except for that one valley pan that got shot, but oh well. Well, the engine is finally sealed up for good this time, so now it's time for all the external bits to go back on. First up is the exhaust manifolds. I'm painting these exhaust manifolds with Bill Hirsch exhaust manifold paint, which in my opinion is the best exhaust manifold paint on the market. This stuff dries to a really nice color and is quite durable. Here's some tractors I applied this paint on, and after a year, they still look as good as the day I applied it. After these dry out, I then bolt them up to the engine. The oil pressure and filter unit is up next. After tightening down and torquing the bolts, I then install a new oil filter. Time for the water pump. After coating everything down with sealant, I install 2 new gaskets and then bolt this guy up to the engine. While torquing down the water pump, I realized I hadn't made a mistake in a while, so I decided to go ahead and make my 5th mistake. There was supposed to be a hose I installed between the water pump and the intake, and there is no way it could go on after installation. I mean, look at this. There's not even a full inch of space between these 2 pipes. So now it's time to hastily make a hose. After a quick measurement made with the utmost accuracy, I chop up the hose, pull off the water pump, install my new hose, and quickly reinstall the water pump while the sealant is still wet. I'm now finally able to torque it down. The final thing to do is to tighten up the coolant hose. It seems fitting that since the water pump just went on, now I should install the fuel pump. So that's what I did. Time to work on the carburetor spacer. After setting it on the engine and making some more extremely accurate measurements for hose cutting, I decided to make a gasket for the spacer. For some reason, my engine gasket kit did not include a gasket for the bottom of the spacer, but that is not a problem when you have gasket paper and scissors. So, after some quick cutting and hole punching, I now have a custom gasket for my carb spacer. After cutting my hose to size, the carb spacer can now be installed on the engine. It's only logical that after the carburetor spacer, that the carburetor would go on next. After setting it on the carb spacer, I then install the air cleaner and find my next mistake. I bought an air cleaner stud that was way too long. So long in fact that the wing nut wasn't even close to touching the air cleaner lid. Well, at this point, I decided that rather than returning the stud to the store that was a whole 40 miles away, that I would rather make this stud work. I cut some new threads into the stud, cut it in half with a hacksaw, and voila! A new air cleaner stud that works. The last major thing I want to tackle is the distributor. After giving it a quick coat of clear coat, I install the vacuum advance, put in new points, a new condenser, a new rotor, and finally, a new cap. Now, this can go into the engine. After dropping the distributor into the engine, I ensure it's in time, tighten it down, and begin connecting all the spark plug wires. Once complete, I throw the air cleaner on for the final job. What engine rebuild is complete without stickers? I got these stickers from the Bird's Nest, and after doing some research online, I do my best to install these stickers and decals into their factory locations. Once installed, these stickers make the engine look amazing. By the way, all the decal sets for these Thunderbirds come with a 390 decal for the air cleaner. However, these decals weren't used until the 1965 model year. So, just something to watch out for if you're trying to go for a more factory look in your engine bay. And with that, my engine rebuild is complete. Well, not really technically. This engine still needs some stuff, like the alternator, the fan, and some vacuum lines, but all of that will be saved for a later date. I have to admit, this engine came out looking even better than I hoped. Since this is going in the 64 though, it'll be sitting under cover for a while until it's ready to be installed. But I can't wait for the day I hear this bad boy come to life. And since I probably won't have an exhaust system built for it yet, I'm sure the whole neighborhood will also hear it come to life. Well, that's it for this video. I'll be continuing on my 1963 Thunderbird in the next video, and whenever I get the engine back from the machine shop, we'll go through this fun process again. Hopefully with fewer mistakes. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Oh yeah, these valve covers were installed backwards. The spark plug holders should have been installed facing the front of the engine.